Okay, everybody, hello and welcome to the Core Web Vitals portion of C3 2021. My name is Katie Greenwood and I am an SEO manager here at Conductor. And since we'll be hanging out for a little bit, I always like to kick this off with a little fun fact about myself. So I am allergic to pumpkin. Now, you know that, obviously super important for the topic we're talking about today. It is also my great honor and privilege to introduce my longtime friend and colleague, Samantha Pena. Sam?
Hey everyone, my name is Samantha Pena. I'm an SEO strategist here at Conductor, currently writing out the pandemic with my two very fat cats who, if we're lucky, might make a guest appearance later today, and also my 90+ houseplants, my latest COVID hobby. We're here today to talk about Core Web Vitals, but before we get into it, I am sending a quick poll in BigMaker if you just pop over. And I would love to get a pulse from everyone. How many of you know what Core Web Vitals is?
And while we're taking the poll, I just wanted to explain how we'll be handling questions, as I'm sure since this is a pretty hot topic, there's going to be quite a few. So if you have a question, pop it into the Q&A sidebar on the right side of your screen, and we'll answer it at the end of the presentation in the order it was received. If we run out of time, no worries. Someone from Conductor will follow up with you after the presentation to make sure that that was answered. We will get back to you as soon as we can. So Sam, how's that poll looking?
It looks like we've got a pretty good mixture, 40% very familiar, 45% sort of familiar, and then some is why you're here. Okay, excellent. Well, if you've been following any SEO news or have talked to an SEO recently, you probably have heard the phrase Core Web Vitals at least once, if not 100 times in the past year. Core Web Vitals was first introduced by Google in early 2020, and Google continued to highlight its importance by announcing that CWB metrics will officially be part of their page experience ranking signals starting May of 2021. And all the SEOs sort of went like this. This was a huge deal because Google very, very rarely announces algorithm changes in advance or tells us exactly what they'll be changing. So this spurred a lot of conversations and actions about the upcoming page experience update. And then just 2 days ago, with only a few weeks left before this much anticipated algorithm update, Google yet again announced that they'll be pushing back the launch date. And again, SEO sort of stood to attention, probably the same way my cat Pepper does when I take out the treats. This is my cat Pepper. So with all the news that's come out about Core Web Vitals and the page experience update, here is what we know so far. This algorithm update will now officially start launching in mid-June and should finish rolling out by the end of August, so it'll be a gradual rollout. Page experience ranking signals will include existing factors, but adds 3 new metrics called the Core Web Vitals. This rollout will apply only to mobile search to start, but it will be global, applied on all browsers on mobile devices. And Google may also start testing additional visual indicators in search results that highlights pages with great page experience. And you can probably imagine once that starts rolling out, that might impact click-through rates from organic search. And last, but perhaps most importantly, great content will still override these page experience signals. This is something that Google has explicitly said in all of their announcements. And there are also some new tools and other information they announced related to changes in how they'll handle like top stories carousel, specifically that AMP is no longer a requirement to appear in top stories. So I would encourage you to read their announcements and FAQ closely if you want to learn more about the other changes that will happen in June. And here is a visual. I apologize, that is my cat. Here is a visual on which page experience signals are currently going to be integrated in Google's ranking algorithm starting in June. So the factors in gray, like mobile friendliness, safe browsing, HTTPS secure protocol, and mobile no mobile intrusive interstitials have all been signals in Google's algorithm for many years now, but what will be added are the 3 Core Web Vitals metrics in green at the top: LCP, FID, and CLS.
I am so excited your cat made an appearance. It's like made my day. So what exactly are Core Web Vitals? Core Web Vitals are signals developed by Google to score the speed, responsiveness, and stability of each page on your site. And this isn't exactly groundbreaking. Page speed has been important for quite a while, on desktop since 2010, on mobile since 2018. But historically, this stuff has been really difficult to measure because there's been a ton of different and confusing metrics. So basically, this is a way for Google to provide clear, standard guidance on what a good user experience should be and what we should all be following. So now let's take a deep dive into what everything actually is. So the first is the largest contentful pane. And this is what the technical definition of this, is how long it takes for the largest image or text block visible within the viewport to render. So to keep it simple, it's the point where the page's main content has likely loaded. So the good stuff on your page. So Google standards here are 2.5 seconds or less. Again, to reiterate, when your main focus of the page has loaded, should be less than 2.5 seconds. The next is the first input delay. And this quantifies the experience a user has when interacting with unresponsive pages, which is something we've all experienced whether working on our own site or when we're shopping around or just clicking around the internet. So for example, let's say a user clicks on a link on your page and it's the time when a browser is actually able to start processing a response to that action. Usually a delay happens because the browser is busy doing something else. And in my experience, it's because of JavaScript. You're going to hear me take some jabs at JavaScript a lot during this conversation. We have a love-hate relationship. It tends to be the source of a lot of problems in the Core Web Vitals and the things we're talking about today. So that's what first input delay is. It's when a user clicks on something and it's just not loading at appropriate speed. So according to Google guidelines, an appropriate speed is 100 milliseconds or less. And finally, the cumulative layout shift, or the CLS, which is much easier to say. This looks at the visual stability of your site because it quantifies how often things are jumping around. So what is a layout shift? This is when a visible element within the viewport changes its start position from one rendered frame to the next. So, you know, when you're on a site doing your thing and you go to click on something, but then the page kind of jumps and then you click on something else and it's like wicked annoying to the point where it's so annoying my accent comes out. That's what it is. So Google standard here is just 0.1 or less, which basically means this shouldn't happen. It's all happened to us. It's a bad user experience. And Google is now saying like, hey, nobody likes this. Don't do it anymore.
So now that we've talked about what the Core Web Vitals metrics are, let's talk a little bit about why this matters. Aside from the potential SEO benefits and that it'll be included in Google's ranking algorithm, there are also tons of other reasons why you should be closely monitoring and improving your CWV metrics. So studies conducted by Google show that a 1 to 6 second increase in page load also increases bounce rate by over 100%. Another study shows that sites that meet Core Web Vitals good thresholds are 24% less likely to abandon the website. And yet another A/B test shows that optimizing for CWV generated an 8% increase in sales. So in short, performance matters. Improving your page experience can not only benefit your overall organic search performance, but can also positively impact how people engage with your website content, as well as other downstream metrics like the good stuff, conversions, leads, and sales.
So now that we've explained to you what all of this stuff is and why it matters, now we're going to talk about the fun stuff, which is working on your own site. And the first step, as it is with everything in SEO, is benchmarking and measuring. You really want to start by knowing exactly what's going on with all of your priority pages and your priority keywords. And there's a couple little nuances here as well. So if you're a Conductor customer, log into Conductor and say, hey, where are my page one rankings and keywords? You know, we probably do this every day. But what we want to focus on here is who is ranking behind you right now. And the reason for this is, let's be honest, if you have a competitor who is really, really focusing on the Core Web Vitals, but not making massive changes to their content, and you know, you're kind of lacking a little bit here, you don't have the team, you got a ton of things going on, you just haven't been able to focus on this as much. This might be why they overtake you in the next few months. So really focus on those competitors that are behind you. Maybe add some new ones to the conductor that you're not tracking, and just keep a close eye on somebody who's chasing your tail a little bit. So really benchmark, make sure you know what's going on, and keep a tight focus on those priority pages and keywords. We don't need to boil the ocean here. You don't have to have every single keyword ranking memorized off the top of your head. That's impossible. That's ridiculous. Just keep an eye on those things that really matter to your business and lead to high conversions. And there's lots of great tools to tell us exactly what we need to work on here. So not shocking, one of the most popular and kind of the source for this is Google Search Console. And in my opinion, this is a very easy way to figure out exactly what's going on. So when you log into Google Search Console, you will see the Core Web Vitals report, which lists out your problem URLs and lists exactly what's going on with them. Again, pretty simple to figure out what's going on here because it's straight from Google's mouth about what we need to work on. This also ties into the new page experience report, which really rolls everything together with Core Web Vitals, security, and mobile usability. If you haven't logged into Google Search Console yet and checked out the page experience report, I really recommend that you do. It's very cool and can really provide kind of a good picture to stakeholders about what's going on with the site and what you need to work on. Again, this, for once, Google is telling us exactly what we need to work on to make our site meet these standards, so we should probably listen to them.
Cool. And then if you want to test one-off URLs, you can also use a Google tool. They have PageSpeed Insights tool, which will give you field and lab data for a single URL for both mobile and desktop. Just a quick note, field data is taken from the Chrome User Experience Report. It's what real-world users actually experience when they go on your site. And then lab data is simulated data. Both have their uses. And the other great thing about PageSpeed Insights is that it will also give you page speed diagnostics on issues impacting speed for that URL, as well as suggestions on how to improve performance for that page. And just a quick reminder that the conductor for Chrome extension will also give you data from PageSpeed Insights. So if you want a really quick insight as you're doing research, would recommend downloading it. And then lastly, you can also test pages in bulk through Deep Crawl, which is one of our partners. When you crawl your site with JavaScript rendering enabled, you will automatically get metrics for all the pages you crawl. And they will also show you the URLs that fall in the good, needs improvement, or poor category for each metric. And while this is simulated lab data, it can still give you a pretty good indication of how all of your pages are performing, and you can start doing more surgical analysis from there. And in addition, you can also get insights for other page experience signals as well, such as non-secure HTTP issues, among other technical issues impacting your site.
So Google is going to sort your pages into 3 different categories: good, needs improvement, and fail. And good is the only passing score here. Needs improvement isn't like a C average where it's okay and you can like sneak by. Good is the only one that is good. So if you have any priority pages in fail, jump on these immediately, because these are the ones that are really going to be hurt if your competitors are focusing on Core Web Vitals and you're not. Same thing with needs improvement pages. Prioritize any priority pages in there and make sure that these are fixed right away. This also really tells us what we need to work on. So if anything's in fail, check these out, see what's going on. Fail is obviously fail. It's kind of like the big scary word that's flashing on the screen. Needs improvement means there's probably some minor things that we need to fix, but overall it's generally okay. But good is the only passing score. So all of your priority pages should absolutely be in good. And unfortunately, as much as we wish there is no quick fix here. We can't push a button and magically fix everything. There's going to be a lot of trial and error and a lot of frustrating afternoons where we need some extra cups of coffee. But in my experience, there's a few usual suspects we can check that tend to cause a lot of our problems. And I'm going to dig on JavaScript again. Again, we have a love-hate relationship. JavaScript tends to be the thing that is causing that extra load time, and that affects page speed specifically. So check to see if you've got some old JavaScript in there that's just slowing you down. Marie Kondo it, get rid of it. It brings you no joy. It's not fun. You don't need it. Also check your images. Make sure that your developers are adding images to your site within best practices, that they're optimized, and that they're locked into where they should be. Preload your key resources and prioritize above the fold content. What your user is seeing first is the thing that should be, fixed, loaded, the absolute first thing on the page. And finally, audit the site for security issues. Google has been telling us for years that your site should be secure. There's really no excuse for it to not be secure at this point. So just do a quick health check and make sure everything's up to date there. You can do this in deep crawl, you can do this on lots of tools, but really there's no excuse to not be secure at this point. And I'm once again going to take a dig at JavaScript. Check your JavaScript.
All right, we can't talk about algorithm updates without talking about this. What if June comes around and you think you've been hit by the page experience update? You might think that everything is going to sync. Well, if you think that you've been hit by an update, first, take a deep breath. Second, remember that the Core Web Vitals and the page experience update will not result in a manual action penalty. You won't drop off of Google if your CWV metrics are poor. I know it looks scary, but it's not like Google is going to de-index your pages if you have a poor page experience. And it's not like a manual update or a core algo update where you have to wait until the next update to see your site recover if you make improvements. From all the announcements and chatter that have been surrounding this update over the past year, it sounds like these metrics will primarily be used as a tiebreaker for situations where two pieces of content are comparably similar from a content quality perspective. So definitely keep that in mind. And, of course, it'd be very foolish of me to make broad sweeping statements that the page experience update will have absolutely no impact. So take Google's claims about this update with a grain of salt. But like I mentioned before, there are other reasons why you should be paying attention to CWB metrics as well, aside from SEO. But in short, try not to panic. And if you think you've been hit, then make changes. Run another audit to benchmark where your pages are currently at with CWV. Also, more than likely, you won't be able to make changes and make an impact on this on your own. So make friends with other teams, with your dev team, design, UX, content. Everyone is, contributing to CWV together. And you can work with these teams internally to address systemic issues impacting your performance. And then lastly, look at your page templates and work on optimizing key templates that drive high traffic or high revenue to your site, because making improvements to templates can help improve many pages with just one change.
So I wanted to address this because I've had this conversation with a few clients. You're making these changes and you feel like you're on an endless treadmill here, and it's very frustrating, and you probably look like my dog Lucy. I said when it rains, but honestly, this is just what her face looks like all the time. So that's just her face. It's going to be frustrating. This is going to be a bit of an uphill battle. There's going to be no sweeping change that completely fixes your site. What we recommend here is trying to find those systematic changes. So there's probably going to be some patterns that are happening over and over and over again on your site. Someone just said my dog is cute. Thank you so much. So it's unlikely that there's going to be a one-off issue on one page that isn't happening on several other pages on your site. So try to find those patterns because they exist. And again, it's probably JavaScript and it's probably your images that are going to have the most impactful changes on your site. But those little issues do make a difference. Google has told us that all this is part of the user experience, and any of these marginal changes that you're doing are ultimately going to help a user on your site. So even if it doesn't have this big impact, it is ultimately helping your rankings in Google and helping somebody have a better experience on your site. So again, this is going to be an ongoing effort, so keep chipping away at it. So if you've been listening to us for a little while and you're kind of rolling your eyes and saying like, you know what, screw Google, I already have a secure site, it's already optimized for speed, I already abide by Google best practices, like I have enough on my plate, I don't really need to care about this, and why is this any different from the million other things Google announces on Twitter every single day? Well, it's different because Google has told us it's different. These are going to be the general guidelines that Google moves forward with on what's going to be the standard for best practices. And we're not 100% sure yet, but this is likely going to be how Google tells customers that your site is a good site with a little badge like Girl Scouts. And the news here keeps coming. So even though Google announced that this is not going to be a requirement, like we said, you're not going to be kicked off the internet, at the same time, it's going to be a ranking factor. So think about this, make sure it's part of your roadmap for the next few months, work on the things you can work on, prioritize the things that are important, and make sure that your site is abiding by these guidelines as best as you possibly can. And we're all in this together. We're still learning this. We're still going to be learning this for the next few months. We don't have all of the information yet. Sam and I have had to update this presentation a few times because of new information from Google, and I'm sure more announcements are going to keep rolling out. So if you do learn something new, share it with the SEO community and make sure that you're checking with the SEO community, because that's going to be your best resource for insights. Check out Twitter, check out publications, check out LinkedIn. This is where people are going to be telling the things that they learn about Core Web Vitals. Also, I strongly feel that Mighty Ducks 2 is a much better movie than Mighty Ducks 1, and I stand by that statement. So don't panic here. We're still learning these things. Just work on your website as best as you can and make sure that you're checking in with the community. Sam, do you have any final thoughts here?
Yeah, based on what we know of the page experience update, and like Katie mentioned, it has been a central part of a lot of SEO discussions over the past year, and also past algorithm updates that Google has released in the last few years. It's crystal clear what Google is prioritizing. You can kind of sort of tell they're pushing websites to provide only the highest quality content experiences for users, whether that's from a content perspective, your technical, your speed, all of that matters. And this is worth taking note. You know, shortcuts won't do it anymore, probably have not done it over the last few years. And we need to be thinking about, you know, optimizing for our users and putting them front and center anytime we build something new.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So we made sure we left plenty of time for questions here, again, because this is very much a conversational topic. We're still learning a lot of things. I do like seeing all of the chatter around Mighty Ducks 2. Obviously, that was the thesis of our conversation today, that and Sam's cat. So we're going to jump over into the questions.
Cool. I see a few questions. So what's the potential impact? That is something that I have had many conversations with. I've followed some SEO chatter around this. I get asked this question all the time, and the truthful answer is I don't know. You know, no one really knows what'll happen after an algo update. I'm not even sure if Google will know exactly what will happen. There are some conspiracy theories as to, you know, that potentially is the reason why they pushed back the launch date. But we can make some educated guesses around what will happen. So based on everything I've read from Google, as well as what other very smart SEOs are saying over the last year about this update, the general consensus is that the impact will probably be minimal, definitely way less than a core algo update. You know, and we can also extrapolate from other page speed algo updates in the past, like when desktop and mobile became ranking factors, desktop and mobile page speed became ranking factors many years ago. The impact was pretty minimal. And, you know, it's to be said that many sites have been focused on optimizing for Core Web Vitals over the past year, ever since Google announced it. So that might have something to do with it, but we could potentially anticipate a similar outcome. And like I mentioned before, this will probably be used as a tiebreaker. So you might see more of an impact if you're already ranking in the top 3 or the top 5, especially for, you know, more competitive queries where you know that your fellow competitors in those top positions have good content quality as well. But definitely monitor your page 1 rankings when this starts rolling out.
All right, next question. When I check my Core Web Vitals report in Google Search Console, I'm overwhelmed by where to begin. How do I start? And this is a great question, and it's how everybody is feeling. Start with your priority pages and those systematic updates that you can make. So again, what is your top converting page? That one needs to have a good score. What is your second converting page? That one needs to have a good score, and then just work down the list. Once you have fixed all of the issues on those pages, whether it's 5, 10, 20, 100, whatever you need to do, Then look for those things that you can update site-wide in your most recent tech audit or site audit or things like that. So again, focus on those priority pages, especially if they are in fail, then do needs improvement, and then look at the things that you can fix on a mass scale just to make your life easier. And then I would go back and focus on all of the pages in fail. But look at what those issues are too and try to make a plan off of that. If it's something you can fix easily, do it. If it's something that's going to be a little bit harder, take some more time, see if it's in fail or needs improvement. So again, the main takeaway we want to make here is priority pages need to be in good. Look at those. Make a case right now for your team. Conductor can help you do that if you need to, and make sure that those are within the rollout standards, hopefully by June, but we do think this is going to take a little bit longer. You just might lose some competitive rankings if your competitor does this better than you do at first, but we can get those back eventually.
Yeah, I see a few questions here around whether the experience update will impact the websites on a domain level or on a page level. So Google has actually weighed in on this. They have said that it will be at a page level, and so definitely look at pages on an individual basis. That'll probably be how it'll be factored in. But like I was mentioning before, many sites utilize page templates when publishing pages. And so an issue that you might see on one URL might be impacting more than just that one URL. And looking at those kind of systemic issues at the page template level might help you make changes on a larger scale with just one change.
All right, next question. As an SEO specialist, how do I convince an already busy web development team that they should take time to address Core Web Vitals issues when they already feel that overall page sizes and load speeds are sufficient, even though site reports show they need improvement? This is the constant conversation that we're having internally. I don't want to say battle, it's a conversation. One thing that I would emphasize is that this is going to be a ranking factor, and this is going to be a competitive loss, and we can show impact there too. So we keep going back to this and repeating it over and over again for a reason. Make it digestible. Emphasize the need for this on your priority pages, and we can show the potential loss here if we lose the rankings that we currently have. So let's say our highest converting page drops from position 1 to position 8. That's a major loss. We know this, and we also know that this is likely going to happen if we don't meet Google standards and we don't get that nice little Girl Scout badge when June rolls out and when Google rolls out. I will forever call it a Girl Scout badge. So this is how we can make this a little bit more feasible to our developers. Again, we don't need to boil the ocean here. We can do it piece by piece and organize it by priority, and emphasize that this is going to be a massive competitive loss if we don't do this. So hopefully that at least opens the door to more conversations with the dev team going forward, because this is straight from Google's mouth that this is going to matter, and if you don't do it, you are going to lose those rankings.
I will also say around that, a method that you could take is from like a more data-driven approach as well. You could suggest running an A/B test, so similar to one of the stats I pulled out earlier around an A/B test generating 8% increase in online sales after improving CWV. You could set up a similar test like that, where you select, say, certain pages and see, okay, if we have this set of pages as test A, and then a control as B, we improve CWV for the set of, page A, and see what impact that has to your sales or to some of the other downstream metrics as well. That could also be another way to prove out the value of improving CWV aside from just organic search losses and gains there. Looking at some of these others, so I see a few questions around a lot of the updates. Core Web Vitals suggests removing code that helps us track users like GA and other tools like Hotjar. The only action item that makes sense for both marketers and the user is image optimization. True. What's your take on the trade-off between losing conversion tracking opportunities in order to optimize for page speed? Yeah, that's a good question. So I often see that as well in page speed insights and any diagnostics, where often the JS that's an issue is like an analytics tracking code. And so it's to me, it would be looking at what those other opportunities are. I don't think that it makes sense personally to stop tracking, to take out GA or take out your analytics tracking code in order to optimize for speed, because how will you measure your traffic if not for those tracking codes? But there might be some additional opportunities that you could explore in order to shave out some of the few seconds, whether that's from images or from other JavaScript that might be blocking the initial rendering. There might be some other opportunities for you to take there as well. But I would suggest looking at the diagnostics reports in PageSpeed Insights tools and in GSC to see what those additional opportunities might be.
I'm going to jump in for 2 questions here. So are the 3 core web vitals equally important? Yes. Google has not prioritized any one over the other. These are all equally important metrics for each page on your site. Have they postponed from May to June? Yes, this was announced this week. There's no set date for when this is rolled out, unless Google tweeted out something during this presentation, which is extremely likely. But so far, this has been postponed from May to June. And I thought there was one more. Those were the 2. There's a lot of questions here, guys. Bear with us. We're still rolling through all of these.
One of the other questions that I see here from Sharon, what if the poor page experience is on mobile while the majority of your traffic is desktop? Is the tiebreaker specific to desktop/mobile? So I've gotten that question before. Like I mentioned earlier, the page experience update will roll out for mobile search predominantly, but that's to start. And they've specifically said that. And so it's not like the page experience update won't be rolled out on desktop results. And so definitely something that you should still be paying attention to, even if most of your traffic right now is desktop. This update will impact desktop in the future. We don't have a date on that yet, but definitely it's not something that will be going away. And then I see one from, what do you do if Search Console tells you not enough data collected for this property? So Search Console is just one of the ways that you can get Core Web Vitals metrics and page experience, metrics, but there are tons of other ways. We will send out this, this deck with some information on tools you can use. But like I mentioned before, you can use the PageSpeed Insights tool that Google has developed, as well as other crawling tools as well will give you some Core Web Vitals metrics if GSC tells you not enough data collected for this property. You can still get simulated lab data to give you a good sense.
I see one to repeat my concerns, also known as my deep hatred of JavaScript. It's nothing specific. It's just in my experience working in SEO, JavaScript tends to be the main problem when it comes to speed issues and loading issues, especially when it comes to that first input delay. So when a user clicks on something and the link just doesn't load, it's just obnoxious, you're taking forever and it leads to a bounce. It's because the page is trying to load JavaScript and not the action that user is taking. So that's why I always recommend checking any JavaScript issues first, because it tends to be JavaScript that is causing that problem. Again, we have a testy relationship. It's been tough. We've worked through it sometimes, but then it always happens again. So that's why, to make this a little bit more digestible, to make this a little bit more feasible, instead of going through line by line, I always recommend looking at your site-wide JavaScript and image issues, because those tend to be associated with page speed and the Core Web Vitals as well. So taking things more of a systematic approach than a page-by-page, line-by-line issue, just so we can get things done at scale. There's going to be a mix of both here when you're making updates, especially on the priority pages. You do really need to go line by line and see what's going on. But if we can make any site-wide changes, like a template update, because you're seeing all of this on your blog pages or things like that, we do want to do those as much as we can. A lot of this just rolls back into general site health. If you have bad JavaScript, this is Google's way of saying, get rid of it. If you have a site that jumps around a lot, this is Google's way of saying, get rid of it. It's not anything that's truly groundbreaking. It's not anything we haven't really thought about before. It's just Google's way of saying, like, hey, now everybody has to do it because there's standards.
I also see a question here, should I prioritize content or user experience on my website? That is a tricky question. So first and foremost, Google has said as part of this update that quality content will still override page experience signals. So even if you score in the poor category, you have like a 1 out of 100 in your performance score from PageSpeed Insights, but you have the best content that answers that query, you will probably still perform really well. That being said, paying attention to some of these CWV metrics and your user experience is also still important, because even if you have a really high quality piece of content, a user lands there, but it takes 4 seconds for your content to load, more than likely the user might get frustrated and bounce out. And so I find that you have to weigh both, still publishing high quality content, but also keeping in mind what will users actually experience once they land on this page.
I see a question here around plugins for Core Web Vitals. The Conductor plugin does look into that page speed data, so it is helpful there. Specifically for Core Web Vitals, I don't have a recommendation. If anybody has one in the chat, I highly encourage you to share. SEO is a collaborative environment, kind of based on this slide. We're learning, so if you have a good tool, shout it out there. Sam, do you have any that you have off the top of your head?
I know that Google has, I actually have it, Google does have a Web Vitals plugin that they released, and so you could download that. I can try to find it and send it over in the chat as well.
I also see a question, where do we compare Web Vitals and page experience? So this is in Google Search Console. So you can see the core Web Vitals report and the page experience report side by side. It kind of rolls everything into one. So again, I really recommend that you click around in that today. It's pretty cool. It's a fun thing to report on, and it's also very, very digestible for your teammates as well, who might not be as versed in this as you are. So check that out, the page experience report. Big fan over here.
Looking at all of the, okay, so do you think the 19 or 20 Google updates so far this year are a warning to get ready for the CWV update? CWV is going to be part of the core, so it'll be rolling, yes. Like I mentioned earlier, I do think that this is like a sneak peek of what we might expect from Google down the line. It's super clear from all of the past updates that Google has had that they are prioritizing content quality, page experience from everything that has been published over the last few years. So I do think that this is direction that organic search and SEO is going to go. But yes, I believe they did say that it'll eventually be rolled into their core algorithm. It just won't be in June. Someone correct me if I'm wrong there. But I do think that it will be eventually part of their core ranking algorithm. And then they definitely said that the mid-June rollout will be rolling. It should be finished rolling out by end of August.
Okay. I have a lot of technical dev side issues. Are the reports that are generated enough insight for my devs to take action? For example, if I have unminified JavaScript, will the team know what to fix? They should, because these reports that Google is giving us and a deep crawl on PageSpeed Insights, they do tell us exactly what's going on here. They list it out. Again, for once, Google is being very generous and telling us, hey, fix it. So these should be enough to let the dev team know if there is any confusion, if there is any pushback, if there is any questions. The online community has been very vocal about this and giving context and step-by-steps into what's going on here. So a quick Google search should help provide some context if the team is confused. And again, Conductor can also help you with this, and there's resources out there. So rely on the community, but again, in my opinion, these reports are very straightforward into what's going on, especially in Google Search Console with issue, JavaScript, why it's failed, need improvement, or good.
I see a few questions on if we don't have a web developer in-house, any recommendations for how to easily fix these CWV metrics. So we'll send out a handout after this as well, or rather it's in the handouts tab in BigMaker, but there are some easier things that you could do. So like Katie had mentioned earlier, images sometimes in like poorly sized images or, image optimization can help shave some seconds from your page speed. So making sure that you have the right image size for the right, for your pages, as well as kind of looking at those, that could be an easier thing that that you can do. And there are tools online that can help you optimize your images to cut down on some speed there. So yeah, check out that handout there. We do have some information around how you can make some of these changes as well, and what you can do if you don't have a developer in-house.
Okay. I think we have time for 2 more questions. Let's do 2. Sam, do you want to jump in on? And once again, guys, we will be following up with you if these questions are not answered. We're trying to answer the ones that are repeated so we can get to as many people as possible. Some of these are specific to your site, so we will try to follow up with you and make sure that these get answered. Again, I know there's a lot. I know it's frustrating, but we will be reaching out. I have my final question, which is, do I think it was fair that Adam Banks was forced to change teams from the champion winning Hawks to the District 5 Ducks? Honestly, it was a little shady by Gordon Bombay, but rules are rules. And I think it was really important as his development, for his development as a player. He would not have made varsity in D3 if he did not play for the Ducks. So that is my final closing thought there.
It's hard to beat there. I will answer just the one question. Should you focus on field data or lab data separately, especially if the data differs from one another or combined? Google has said that they will be using field data for their ranking signals. Of course, there's going to be a delay. Field data is based on the Chrome user experience report. Again, it's based on real world data of how users actually experience your site on the Chrome browser, and they will be using that. So there's going to be like a 28-day delay as they collect that data. But I would look at your field data to understand how your pages are currently performing now. But you can utilize lab data if you're making optimizations on your site and you want to measure whether those have made an impact. Lab data, since it's simulated, it's on a more controlled environment, can help you get a sense of whether some of the changes that you're making are making an impact.
And I did see one last question. Would love to know what the most common issues is across industry. I believe someone shared a resource for that in the chat. So I would just scroll up. I think someone linked an article there. But that's all the time we have today, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. You asked great questions. There was great conversations going on in the chat. This is recorded and will be shared. We were going to do our best to get back to everybody. Again, lots of questions, and thank you so much for sharing them. If you liked chatting with us, I really recommend that you check out the Conductor Forum, which is now live, so you can chat with somebody like me or Sam or anybody else on the Conductor team. We are there to answer your questions. And go check out that Expo Hall. It was really cool. We have a ton of great partners, and we are all, super excited that you're here. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you have an awesome Wednesday, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.